It took the professional Azamat Murzakanov one fight in the UFC to earn a performance bonus his last time out when he took on a tricky fighter in Tafon Chukwe, but he did just that. Flying knee knockout in the third round of that matchup when he was already down 2-0 and it looked like there was nothing left in the tank. By gosh golly darn it, didn't Azamat have a little bit left? You love to see that. He's taking on a guy who's been there and done that in Devin Clarke, the Brown Bear. Another camp out of Elevation Fight Team for Devin Clarke, and apparently they turned a switch that made him mean, because last time out against William Knight, he brutalized William Knight. Now, Matt, I'm going to set this fight up this one way. The fans don't know this is coming, and you don't either. Has there ever been a Devin Clarke fight where he wasn't bleeding from his teeth?
Never. He's gotten teeth knocked out. He's gotten teeth knocked down, but not out. Like, you're right. There has been a weird trend of mouth injuries with Devin Clarke throughout his UFC career.
His teeth, they're made of just regular chiclets or Thrills gum that you pick up at the Dollarama.
Never been in a boring one, though.
There's a reference for you Canadians. Do you like soap-flavored gum? I used to sometimes playing ball. But when you do look at this matchup, Matt, for Azamat Murzakanov, the professional, former Brave CF openweight champion over there, he wins over some big-time names that you will recognize. Obviously, Mohamed Fakhretdinov. Exactly. You know him over there with PFL, because they signed him. They're just doing weird things. He got the win over Mateusz Scheffel, that you know from the PFL. He got that win on Dana White's Contender Series. Guto Innocente as well. But those guys over with Brave outweighed Azamat Murzakanov by a lot. And even in his fight against Tafon Chukwe and Mateusz Scheffel, I look at Murzakanov as, you're really a light heavyweight? Like, really? He doesn't look that big.
He does move well for the division, though, and I feel like that's something that doesn't get talked about enough, and I'll openly admit that,
I would hope it does.
But no, like, sometimes being small is a huge advantage, and I'm gonna bring it back to boxing. People hate it when I do this, but
not
still.
Not the porn industry, unless it is.
Okay, we'll just let that one sit, and we'll let the fans take that for what it is. In boxing, though, really easy to move up and down divisions because there's no grappling. You don't have to deal with the weight of your opponent on top of you. It really comes down to speed and technique more than anything. So if you move up a division, you might have less power, but you definitely have more speed. You're probably more technical. Like, if I ask people right now who's more technical, Piotr Yan or Francis Ngannou?
Depends.
Everyone in the world's going to tell me Piotr Yan. I don't think many people would say Francis, even though they're equally effective in their MMA outcome. With Murzakanov, you're right. He is sort of compact for this division, but I do feel like he uses it to his benefit because he does have that speed X factor that we don't often see in the light heavyweight division. And this is the other thing I was going to ask you. We have long said, I guess now Dustin Jacoby's in the rankings, so we can't anymore. He was like the 16th ranked light heavyweight for years. It was, hey, if you beat him, you're ranked. If he beats you, he's probably not ranked, but if he wins like 3 in a row, he will be. Devin Clarke right now holds that position. I feel like in the greater scope of MMA fans, or UFC fans in particular, Devin Clarke does have quite a bit of stock, even though at the UFC level, especially against the highest level of opponents, he hasn't necessarily been able to show that. Against unranked fighters, Devin Clarke is as good as most of them, but he does normally struggle when he then has that next step up to face sort of the more experienced opponents at the UFC level.
Like, if you don't believe us, he comes into the UFC after being the RFA champ.
Blachowicz, guys.
Loses to Alex Nicholson. Okay, whatever. Alex Nicholson can knock out guys. That's fair. It was his only win in the UFC. He went 1-3. He beats Josh Stansbury, a guy you've never heard of unless you're Josh Stansbury or his friend or his family. And I apologize, Josh. It's the facts, though. It's been a while. He beats Jake Collier, which is a win that ages well.
Good win, exactly.
How well Collier's made out at heavyweight and how good he was at middleweight. He loses to Blachowicz, beats Mike Rodriguez, loses to Rakic, beats Darko Stasic, loses to Ryan Spann, beats to Quan Townsend, beats Alonzo Menafield in a fight that was terrible, loses to Anthony Smith in a weird fight that I don't think we needed. A main event
3-round, yeah.
Main event, that one was 5.
Was it? Okay, I couldn't remember.
Loses to Iwan Kutsalaba, the one against Rakic. That Rakic-Smith was a 3-round main event.
I thought they both were for some reason.
Loses to Kutsalaba, beats William Knight. The fight against Iwan Kutsalaba gets out-wrestled, and if I'm not mistaken, he got dropped in that fight.
His teeth knocked down.
Yeah, even though it was a lot of back and forth. But Devin Clarke has only lost to good guys or around the rankings guys that have been ranked, and Alex Nicholson. For Azamat Murzakanov, supposed to be in the UFC in 2017, was booked in a fight with Joachim Christensen. USADA came a-knocking, and that's why it took him a few extra years.
That would have been a tough fight for Christensen, if we're being honest.
Would have been a tough fight. For Azamat Murzakanov, when he was fighting outside of the UFC and Contender Series, fast twitch, very quick in these fights, backing you up with kicks, we talk uppercut in the clinch. Azamat Murzakanov's uppercut in the clinch, disgusting. Against Mateusz Scheffel, 2.5 minutes of nothing until he knocks him out. Against Tafon Chukwe, Throwing wild stuff in the first round, not landing much. Second round, his hands are starting to drop. Third round, he looks like he's completely out of anything that he had. And then he just walks across. Brandon Jenkins, what was his name? He was in the UFC, the guy that he beat. Jacob Kilburn over with PFL. He gets a flying knee knockout. He grabs his head, walks across, and throws his knee up and knocks him out, and everybody went nuts. That was Azamat Murzakanov against Stefan Chukwueze for me. It's like, what? Really?
I thought it was awesome, though.
I was entertained, but really? That was what it took. Tefan was in front so big, and Azamat was a big favorite in the matchup. It did surprise me. For Devin Clarke, he got stuck in a guillotine, a couple of them against William Knight, where he went, wow, how did he not tap?
And that's been my problem with Devin Clarke. When you want to talk about the positives, he has good boxing, but not great boxing. I love the leg kicks out of him.
Better.
Devin Clarke's legs are as thick as my torso, though. I'm not afraid to say that whatsoever. This man walks around on tree trunks, and I always do feel like the leg kicks of Clarke are going to be a big X factor in the majority of his matchups at this weight class. Now, I will be curious to see, because Devin Clarke in his last fight fought a guy who basically weighed in at the limit of heavyweight in
251 for William Knight, and it was 220. Well, yeah, 223 for Devin Clarke.
Exactly. Devin Clarke kind of weighed in at what you would expect for a light heavyweight weighing in at heavyweight. You don't expect him to be a 240, a 250, a 260 type of fighter, but Clarke showed that he was able to fight a guy much bigger than him and had great success in that fight. So I'm curious to see how he does against sort of the opposite. Yes, you probably hit harder than Murzakanov, but now you have to adjust yourself for his speed advantage over you. And I do feel like the leg kicks of Devin Clarke are going to be very important, because if he can slow down some of that explosiveness from Murzakanov on the outside, I do think it will hurt some of the big bursts that Azamat can have in this fight. And I'm very curious to see who shoots for the first takedown, because Devin Clarke has great wrestling, but like you brought up, and I'm very glad you did, it's good wrestling, maybe just shy of great.
Two-time JUCO All-American Wrestling for the Brown Bear, for the professional master of sport in hand-to-hand combat.
But what I really like out of Devin Clarke is he's great with his offensive takedowns. The problem is he can get caught in tricky positions every now and then. Against Anthony Smith, he showed that. There was a grappling exchange, and before you know it, Anthony Smith has a triangle choke in.
He's got William Knight's back, and there's 15 seconds left in the round. Knight chucks him off, gets his back, and then just starts hitting him.
It's almost like if you saw James Harden on a bad shooting night. You're like, what the hell does this guy even do to begin with? Now, if you see him on a good shooting night, you're like, wait, he might be the best player in the NBA. But for Devin Clarke, it really does come down to how can he accentuate his strengths in the cage. And I'll be honest, I always like watching a Devin Clarke fight. I'm not ashamed to say it.
Just dirty. You're eating a bucket of chicken. You're sitting there going, hey, bigger is better.
I'm not a brown bear apologist, but I'm bordering on one. I'm not going to lie.
Well, Devin Clarke's the underdog in this matchup at a plus 150. Azamat Murzakanov minus 175, the favorite. We have a look at the fan vote over on Topology, Matt. This is I have no idea where it's going to be. And this is the one where I think it's going to be the most contentious. I'm going to say over-under. There's a lot of Murzakanov fans out there. Over-under 80% Murzakanov.
I was thinking 65 for him, so I'll say under, but it'll be the favorite.
729 total votes. 77% Murzakanov, 78% by knockout. For the 23% that have Clarke, 77% by decision. Matt, I took the motor to win the Ultimate Fighter at heavyweight based on his power. I'm taking Brown Bear to win this fight. Based on his wrestling ability, I think he's the less, this is going to sound so stupid, don't clip this, the less old-looking guy at 32 versus the 33-year-old Azamat Murzakanov. I like the finish he had against Scheffel, but before that, there was a lot of nothing. I didn't like anything I saw until the knockout that he had against Chukwueze. For those reasons, I like Devin Clarke. I like the camp change to elevation. I like the cardio that he had at heavyweight against William Knight. I like the wrestling. I like the clinch work. Usually some of these things, they benefit Azamat Murzakanov. I think in this matchup, they're going to benefit Devin Clarke. Has Clarke been chin checked before? 100%, folks. And I know there's a lot of people that like Murzakanov because he is the shiny new toy. He is undefeated. He does have the finishes.
And a fun fighter.
I like Devin Clarke in this matchup. I could be talked either way, but I do like Clarke here.
Murzakinov's last fight reminded me a lot of the career of Marcos Maidana. And I know I've spent a lot of this talking about boxers that I like that half of you probably don't know. Danny Garcia, Marcos Maidana. Maidana would knock people dead in the 12th round, though, of fights that he lost every single round in. He would get dropped, he'd get hurt to the body, he would get out-volumed, and then all of a sudden, he would land an overhand right from Argentina.
Like Aaron Rodgers in 2015 throwing that Hail Mary.
I don't think Aaron Rodgers has any idea who Marcos Maidana is. If you sat him down and you were like, Aaron, do you know who Maidana is? He'd probably be like, who are you? Get out of here.
Where's the playbook?
This is the thing, though. I do agree with you. I like the underdog in this matchup in Devin Clarke, mainly for his wrestling background that I feel like isn't talked about enough. He's someone who... This is the only thing that I don't like about Devin Clarke. He doesn't make adjustments on the fly all that well. I know we're going to talk a lot about Marlon Vera, Dominic Cruz later on in the main event. Those are two guys who do not need their coaches to tell them to make improvements. They can do it on the fly. They can make mid-game adjustments. Whereas for Devin Clarke, it feels like, hey, when the going's going good, he will have a lot of success and he can ride that success. But when he does start to get into a tough fight where it takes him out of his game plan, he can struggle. So I could see a world where he struggles with the wrestling early on and Murzakanov is able to hit him with some power shots. But I agree with the breakdown. I do like Devin Clarke for his well-rounded skill set, but I think this is as fun of a fight on the card as any other.
Should be a big-time fight. There's a lot of Fight Night Picks fans that are fans of the professional Azamat Murzakanov. Let us know in this matchup who you have down below in the comment section. Should be a great one. Big-time main card. Holy smokes. David Onama? Nate Landwehr? What? Where? Who? And in the main event, Marlon Vera, Dominic Cruz. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say.
Let's get into it.